All righty, perfect. Well, it's nice to see everybody this morning. I'm Linda Brubaker, and this is Lunch and Learn. What we're talking about today is the whole idea of ageism in job search. And unfortunately, it affects a lot of us, or at least we think that it does. And some employers think that it might as well. So what we're going to be doing is talking about all of that in just a minute. Before we do, I'd like to introduce myself, okay? As I mentioned, I'm Linda Brubaker. I'm a job search coach. And what I do is that I work with people of all ages and at all stages of their careers, helping them to discover and highlight and showcase their transferable skills to find their next forever jobs. I firmly believe that there's a job out there for everyone and that everyone should be able to hire their next job and also to hire their next employer. So that's who I am. I'd like to introduce Sue for a minute. Let her introduce herself as well. Sue is one of our great supporters and another wonderful resource.
Thanks, Linda. I'm Sue Griffey. I'm known as Sue Mentors in the virtual world, and you've seen me perhaps other places, the Mentors with Pom-Poms, the Mentor with Pom-Poms. Here, I bring them so that we remember to celebrate everything, even things you don't think you should celebrate, even a rejection letter, because you have an opportunity to write a thank you letter. Hooray! So think about things like that. Thanks, Linda. Love to connect with you. I work with a global practice, so that means I talk to people all over the world, and they have the same issues you have, getting attention in this very crowded virtual visual world. Thanks, Linda, for letting me be part of this group.
Thank you for wanting to be and for joining us and all your insights. Okay. So who had a success this week? And as Sue mentioned, it could be anything. And a rejection letter truly is a redirection. It's an opportunity to get yourself back out there and to try and find the next opportunity, as well as letting the person who rejected you be able to give you some information and perhaps some additional feedback. Let them know you're still interested. Yes, Lori.
Hi, I didn't get a job, so it's not that much of an excitement. But what I am going to say is you had mentioned last week about how it's not always your first connections that are going to connect you. So I know some of you, but not all of you. And that's kind of where it came from. They aren't in this group, but it came from someone who knows someone. And it was actually a friend of my daughter's from kindergarten, and now she's a junior in high school. So fingers crossed, everyone, that fingers, toes, prayers, I'll take everything, because it is probably one of the first jobs that I have seen that I've gotten really excited about. So yay, who knows where it's going to go, but they are out there, and I'm starting to see that it seems like more things are opening up. And if anyone can endorse me, I put that in the LinkedIn. I learned a new phrase. I guess I'm a full stack marketer. I didn't know that, but it's really omni-channel, 360, the whole thing. So if you're an engineer, you're full stack engineer. So I just learned about that. So if you could just endorse me on that and any others, I would really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. And fingers crossed. And it can come out of nowhere.
And it absolutely can. But I have a question for you, Lori. When you said full stack marketer, okay, is that a LinkedIn drop-down term, or was that one of your own?
It's in LinkedIn, but it was something that was in the job description, and I had to Google it. Okay, I'm being completely honest.
No, that's okay.
I had to Google it, and I even took a screenshot of it so that I had the definition. And then in talking to someone not from this group yesterday, he was in HR, and he even made a comment to me. He said, "Oh yeah, full stack. I know exactly what that is. It's basically what you are. You're integrated, but you could be, that means you've done multiple aspects of a job." So I learned something. So absolutely. No matter if I don't get the job, at least I learned something from it. So
Linda, can I add something on endorsements? Please. So Lori, I saw your note and was going to put a note, but for all of you, I don't know if this has changed because almost no one talks about endorsements anymore. I think they're valuable because they're a crowdsourced view of what people think of you, which is an external, thank you, Linda, external perspective. In the old days, meaning 4 or 5 years ago, try to have at least 3 skills endorsed by the same person. It gives more weight and credibility. So if you could add a couple others, And I've been thinking about this also. And when you do an ask, then say, and I'll be glad to endorse you for what 3 skills, blah, 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 and just return that, because then we don't feel so bad about asking. And we've defined for you what we want you to endorse. So besides the top 2 skills. And I love that you took this opportunity, because I think it's an underutilized resource in many ways. It's easier, certainly, than recommendations. Thanks, Linda, for letting me.
Absolutely. And the thing is, now that LinkedIn has increased our ability to add skills to the profile, they've now upped it to 100 skills. So if you still only have 50 or you have less than 50, now's your push to go out there and increase them. And the reason I asked Lori is whether or not this was her own term, one that she pulled from a job posting, or one that came from a LinkedIn drop-down box, is that those that are in those LinkedIn drop-down boxes are the terms that people are most likely to use in terms of searching for candidates. So absolutely find them on the postings, add them to your skill set, but start typing it and see what the LinkedIn drop-down box is, and then use that one. While you're adding your skills, it's also an opportunity for you to go in and delete those you no longer want to be found for. Okay. Remember that those are, there's a very broad basis of what's out there. You may have put some of those in there a long time ago. I know I've been on LinkedIn now for 17 years. They sent me a message and said, congratulations. Okay. But the idea is that some of the things that were there are not things that I want to be found for anymore. So I'm spending the time to try and remove some of those as well as adding some new ones. Every time you do that, make sure that you do ask for those endorsements. And so here's another way of looking at it. I'm a believer in give first, ask second. So when you're sending people those messages outside of our group, okay, send somebody a text message, one of your first level connections. I just learned that LinkedIn has increased the number of skills to 100. I don't know whether you've done that yet, but what 3 to 5 skills would you like me to endorse you for? You do that first, you're giving them information, you're providing value. And once you do that, they're going to come back to you and say, that's great, endorse me for this, and what can I endorse you for? If you want to just take the easier route, you can just endorse somebody for a couple of skills. They'll get a message saying you endorse them and asking if they want to endorse you for anything. But this way you have the control. You get to go out there and demonstrate that you're giving first and getting afterwards. The other reason that endorsements are important is, again, for the LinkedIn algorithms. You can have 100 skills in there, but unless that skill has an endorsement, it does not get picked up by the LinkedIn algorithm as being a viable skill. So especially as you're adding new ones, make sure that you're doing that. And then the third thing, and then I'm going to get to the hands that are raised, is that every time you add endorsements or you add new skills, LinkedIn resorts your skills section. You have to go in and manually go in and resort it yourself. On your profile, I'm only going to see the top 2 skills unless I click see more. And when I click see more, I'm probably going to stop looking at 10. They're all going to be there, but my eye is going to get tired and I'm going to stop looking, which means that the top 2 skills on your list should always be the 2 that you most want to be found for. And those top 10, again, all ones you want to be found for, but the 2 most important should be at the top of your list. Don't let LinkedIn do it on the basis of the number of endorsements or anything else. You take control of that because you can and you should. Okay, thank you. All right, I apologize. I don't remember who had their hand up first, so I'm going to do it just on the basis of who I see on my screen. So Chad, you go first.
Thanks, Linda. Quick note on the skills too, before I get to my sort of accomplishment for the week. I was in another job search session Monday night, and the woman who led that group noted that when someone Googles your name, if they find your LinkedIn post, the Google result will show the first 9 skills that you have. Like those, so those are the ones that come up and when somebody Googles your name. That's just a tip to pass along there.
Thank
And
you.
I guess mhm. my accomplishment for the week is that I did get a rejection from the one job that I had applied to so far. So I hadn't thought actually of replying. I'm actually going to go back now that Sherry had said like this is an opportunity, or Sue rather said that it's an opportunity. So I want to go back and see if it was sent from a no reply email address, and if not, then I can do a reply to say thanks for the consideration.
And not only saying thanks for the consideration, especially if you talk to somebody, you might have the email address from the person you talked with. So go back to that person if it's available. And what you want to say is, it's not just that I appreciate the time and the consideration. I was so excited by what I learned in the conversation and all
Okay.
I know about the organization, that I'd like to know if I can keep in touch for future opportunities. Would that be okay?
All right, I like that.
In addition, wonder whether you'd be willing to give me just a little bit of advice. What do you think I can do to better prepare myself for a job like this in the future? That's a different way of asking for feedback. You may not get it, but you're not asking what you did wrong. You're asking them to mentor you, in effect, to show you what you need to do, or what they're suggesting would help you take a job. And you can say here or elsewhere, so they don't feel that pressure of, gee, they want to know what I did wrong here, right? But it
Okay.
gives you those other opportunities to really help get yourself out there. I have seen that work better than just asking for feedback. In addition, that idea that you're still interested, and then you're going to keep following that person if it's a company you're really interested in, and you're going to keep commenting on posts from that company as well as that individual. I've seen people go back and look at that person for another job. And one of the people that I coached to do that went in for a position at a director level, ended up getting a VP level job because they called her. So not a guarantee, but I can tell you
Yeah.
it does happen.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Mark, you're next on my screen.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My successes and then a question at the end. So I just got off the phone actually with an interview for an opportunity that I would really, really, really like with a company I'd really, really, really like. And I don't want to jinx myself, but she already said that she's sending my material on to the next step, which is unusual, but I'll take it. Because this whole process is such a process and stops and starts and frustrations. And yesterday I was feeling really down about things. And the other thing was late last week I had an opportunity. Someone approached me about one that I had to do a writing sample for them, so I submitted that, and then another one for a contract job. So I'm waiting on those. So again, stops and starts, but the last one is a feel good. On my question, so I guess my advice is keep going in there and swinging, because you might have 2 bad days and then a really good day. My question is in terms of like connecting with people on LinkedIn. Like I just had a interview with an inside recruiter at this company. Is it appropriate now to connect on LinkedIn? And then she also mentioned that the hiring manager would be the next step. Is it appropriate to connect with the hiring manager on LinkedIn, or is that too presumptuous? I just wonder if there's an underlying strategy. Thank you.
You're selling yourself. You're marketing yourself. They may not connect, but my recommendation is that you send a connection request even before the interview. And your only connection message is, I'm excited to talk with you on such and such a day. Looking forward to talking with you. That's it. No information about you, no additional information. This isn't a sell. This is your way of saying, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you. I'm doing my due diligence too. While they may not accept the request, they will understand that you are paying attention on LinkedIn as well. And that's always a good thing. Okay. It's that added information background. So whether you do it right after the interview or you do it before. If you do it after, it's, thanks, I really enjoyed our conversation. Looking forward to next steps. If you're doing it before, I'm looking forward to talking to you on such and such a date. You can
Great.
mention the name of the position or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Al, I think you were next.
Yeah, just an update. I think I mentioned this before. My alma mater is creating a job for me. And I've been, like Mark was saying, sometimes you get impatient. And so a couple of weeks had gone by, so I sent an email just following up saying, hey, I'm still interested. I got a call last night. They said, yeah, Al, we're still working on it. I've got a couple of people I need to work on. We want you to talk to so-and-so. I'm like, okay. So sometimes it's just about, we want to, of course, get hired right away. And I think we need to be patient. Sometimes it's really hard to be patient, especially when I've been out as long as I have been. So, but it's coming along, and they said they want to make this the right position, and so I agree. So, so I'm excited. Quick question about: I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn offering to redo my resume and using some tool she said was called RNTS. I heard about it. It sounded kind of odd. It was just kind of out of the blue. And I'm like, offering or saying that if she ran this through the system, it would get 90% more, of course, I'm like, okay, you really can't promise that. And so it was really, I think, an alert to me, like there's a lot of people out there who, of course, you wanted to be paid. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that's a good thing to be aware of, is that there are more and more people who are trying to use LinkedIn as a sales mechanism, and they're doing these direct message sales calls. Okay. We call them a pitch slam. Avoid them. No, right? Nobody can guarantee you anything. And if you're going to be asking somebody to help you with your job search or your resume or any other aspect of anything that you're going to be searching for people for on LinkedIn, make sure you're checking them out thoroughly. Nobody's going to reach out to you directly and say, hey, by the way, I've taken a look at your resume and it needs some help. Can I want to do that. Don't do that. Okay, don't do that. Good catch, Al. Okay, Melanie. Sorry, Michelle.
I could
Sorry about that.
Happy Valentine's Day to everyone here. And congratulations, Al and Mark and even Lori. So it's great, and positivity for this group as well. So I don't have really great news, but I do see it as progress. I was approached by 2 recruiters this week and last, and they had some opportunities for consulting, which is not my desire, but either way, either opportunity is not going to be a fit. It was for a point of sale sort of job, and not really in the wheelhouse that I want to be in. I still want to pursue what my love is, when my passion is. And although I think I could do the job and it was a little bit less pay, I'm just not ready to throw in the towel. So I want to continue to pursue and persevere, and just wanted to share that, the opportunities are still coming, but, not the right one.
They will. What I like, and I think you absolutely should celebrate the fact that people are reaching out, whether it's the right fit or not.
Yeah.
If it is not the right fit, by the way, my recommendation is that if you have somebody else you can recommend, that you do that. It helps build you as a credible source for that person who reached out, and they're more likely to reach out to you again. But it also, that whole idea of giving to get.
Yeah.
Okay. Give first. And that's what networking is truly all about. But congratulations, Michelle. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Okay. Donna. Donna, you're next on my screen. You want to unmute?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
it took me a second. On the phone, sometimes it's challenging. So hi and happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And I've really enjoyed, I'm learning from all of you. Mostly I'm here on behalf of my children who are more in the job market than I am. And so one thing I was wondering when you were talking about the skills and that now you can have up to 100, does it seem ridiculous for somebody who's in their mid 20s to, like, should they max out? Even, you know, yes, they network a lot, they have a lot of contacts, but if they suddenly have like zillions of endorsements and skills, does that seem like not a fit, even if they're even if they're legitimate?
You can pick up a skill from a class, from an internship, from a LinkedIn Learning, from a variety of different things. It doesn't have to just be something that you've done to be able to take a skill set and add it. You may just not have had an opportunity to demonstrate it yet, but it's still something that you can make use of on the job.
Okay, that's helpful. All right, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, I added the link to our private group in the chat. If you are a first level connection, and my connection information is in the chat as well. If you're a first level connection, I can connect, or I can invite you to the group. But if we're not connected, I can't do that. So the only way that you get into the group is by asking to join, or if I invite you, and I'm only inviting people who are first level connections who have been part of this experience. Okay. But in that group, not only do we share information, share articles, I have to check to see whether or not he's here this morning. But several of you are starting to share good information in there. Okay. Sharing job ideas, the endorsement request, all of that information goes into the private group. In addition, I post not just our videos, I post additional information. I post a copy of the chat. So all of that information is there, and it's a good way not only to get yourself out there, but to network with the rest of us, because we're all going through the same thing at the same time. So ask your questions there, ask your questions here. We're here to support you in your job search. Okay. Michelle, is your hand still raised, or did you raise it again? Okay. Perfect. Then no more successes to share. What I want to do, no problem. What I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about ageism and job search. One of the things that I found, and that actually surprised me a little bit, okay, is how many people feel as though they are facing ageism in job search. And we know that it's true. We know it's out there. I will tell you all that that I've had 3 jobs since I turned 50. And now I'm on to my next act. So it can absolutely happen. But about 25% of the current job force is currently 55 and older. And it is predicted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that by the end of the next decade, or sometime in the next decade, those people who are 50 and older will account for 57% of the workforce. Now, what that means is that companies are recognizing that age is not a barrier, or that they're willing to work around it. Not quite sure which. I'm not going to tell you it's not going to affect you. If you think that ageism may be affecting your job search, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say no. It's both. There are some companies who are actively searching for people who are older, okay? What Brenda Miller calls experience rich. You can find some of those companies here. There's actually a certifying organization for age-friendly companies. And the number of companies who are becoming age-friendly is growing. It's another recognition of the fact that companies recognize that older employees have a value and that they're trying to actively increase the numbers. While they may not have the positions that you're specifically looking for, they're great companies for you to follow, to check out, to see whether or not they're available. There are other resources specifically for those of us who are perhaps a little older, or you've just been out of the workforce for a while. And it's an organization called irelaunch.com. I can't even put it in there now. I'm not going to make it a clickable link. I'm just going to put it in. irelaunch.com started out several years ago recognizing that older employees or those who've been out of the workforce for a while need a way to get back in. And so they've helped companies develop what they call returnships, what I call internships for grown-ups. We all know that an internship when you're younger is a great way of learning an industry, getting some experience you can add to your resume, all of the rest of that. These internship for grown-ups programs, regardless of what they're called and whether they're part of iRelaunch or not, are great ways of getting back into the market, recognizing that almost all of us have a job gap. Now, some of those those programs will take you if you've been out for 6 months. Some of them require 2 years. But either way, they're companies that are specifically designed to bring people back in a supportive environment. Not only are you getting paid work experience and you get paid like a full-time employee, you're getting mentorship, you're getting other supportive learning opportunities as part of the process. And the goal of all of these programs is to turn at least 98%, that's their hope, of the people who start these programs, turn them into full-time employees. Now, their numbers are not that high, to be honest. It's closer to 90. But they really do work. And you're going to find them in a variety of industries, and they're going to be called a variety of different things. So always check to see whether or not some of those might be available. I've had 3 people take those programs, okay, take jobs in those kinds of opportunities. All 3 of them have turned into full-time jobs. And so they're really great. One of them actually did it as a career changer. Okay. So they went into an entirely different field. Now, unfortunately, she used it as a way of getting into a DEI kind of a position, and that company has now cut back on DEI. So she's back in the job market again, but looking back in her original field, but she has that additional experience and that current experience that she can now talk to. So there's a way of doing that.
Linda, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Don't know how that happened. Okay, Michelle, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just curious. Are these programs like funded so that they can, I guess market themselves, either age friendly, which I hate that word, but is that how they're easily able to promote?
So you mean the internships for grown-ups that I'm calling them?
Yeah, or even saying that a group, so you shared a URL that has a group of companies that are, marketing themselves as age friendly as they hire. But is this going to be a trend, or is this, something where they're getting a kickback for, ensuring that they're hiring a population, right?
They are not. In fact, in order to be certified as an age-friendly company, you have to go through an application process. You have to demonstrate that your policies are there and that your hiring practices are there to support older employees. And you have to pay as part of this process. Okay, so these are companies that are deliberately saying, we recognize that the workforce is changing. And we need to adapt, because if we are trying to attract the older employee and keep the older employee, we want to be able to maintain that knowledge base, that experience base, and we have to be able to go out there and actively solicit it. We know that companies in the past have worked to really bring in the younger people. And I'm not going to say that's not going to stop. But there are a number of companies who are now recognizing that those of us who have some experience are valuable additions to the workforce. And if they're going to maintain that skill set and grow that skill set within the companies, they have to be willing to work with us. By the same token, though, we have to be willing to work with people of all ages. And I know that some of you have questioned the fact that, all the hiring managers are younger than we are. HR is younger than we are. How do we talk with them? All the coworkers are going to be younger. I can't work with those young guys, gals. Well, you have to be able to do it. In fact, one of the ways that you counter that whole idea about ageism in job search is by adding something on your resume and making sure you have an interview story about working in a multi-generational workforce, about mentoring teams. Those things demonstrate that you are adaptable, willing, able to share your knowledge, and that by doing so, working in those multi-generational as well as multifunctional teams, that you bring a value that somebody else may not. So talk about it in your cover letter, find an interview story, some way of talking about that. That will not only make you stand out, but it helps counter some of those claims. Okay. And thank you, Frank. Yes, apparently I hit my space bar, my mistake. But you're right. Okay. Sometimes tech happens. It's not a problem. It's not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. And I have lots of learning opportunities. In fact, I'm going to use that as a way of talking about ageism in job search, because one of the concerns employers have about us is that we aren't tech savvy and we're not willing to learn new things. So one of the things that you want to do to counter that idea of ageism is to take a class. I don't care whether it's a LinkedIn Learning, whether it's a freebie at the library. Okay. Whether it's a 1-hour class or a 6-week program, whether you're doing it free through Coursera or not, it doesn't make any difference where it comes from. The idea is that you are learning something new that is job related, and you are adding that to your resume. You're also talking about it, okay, in some way or another, because it contributes to your skill set. Learning something new, adding that to that whole resume profile, to LinkedIn, whatever it is, demonstrates two things. Number one, you're willing to learn. Number two, you are proactively getting yourself out there to upgrade your skills, which counters that whole thing from employers saying, too old, won't learn. Too old, not tech savvy. Okay. Too old, too set in their ways. Bringing that information in and then even talking about how you were able to learn something new on the job, whether it's a new software program that they learned. Again, willingness to learn, ability to learn, to adapt, to bring in new tech, new ways of doing things, all helps to make you more valuable and counter that idea of ageism. Okay. All right. Another couple of stats, and then I'm going to move on to other things, but I have a quick question. How many of you feel as though being a little older may have impacted your job search in some way? Just raise your hand either digitally or on screen. Okay. Looks to me like just about everybody. But I'll tell you that you're not alone. The latest statistic from the Pew Corporation said that 90% of employees and job seekers believe that ageism is common in the workplace and in job search. And I will tell you that it's out there, but there are truly ways that we can counter it. Okay. Sue, you've got your hand up.
That was partly an accident, but let me just explain what I'm writing. The information on being a lifelong learner is great. And what I hear back is, I'm job searching right now. I can't even show that I'm doing it. But here's a thought. On LinkedIn, you can follow people who are experts in that field. I'm all about commenting substantively, meaning at least now it's up to 15 words for a comment, but show your learning. Like, I just finished a course and actually worked with a practice data set on blah, blah, blah. How do you set that out? I'm a lifelong learner. You don't have to say it. So there are ways you can feature not just that certificate, but using it in your networking, in your showing your value, giving your value to get value, as Linda and I say. All right. Thanks very much for my
Absolutely.
accidental hand raise.
That's okay. And I'm going to build on that. So when you take a course on LinkedIn Learning, as an example, and you finish it and it generates an automatic post, right? When you add it to your profile. If you do that and I see it, one of the things I'm going to ask you in a comment, if you haven't already done it, is tell me what was the most significant thing you learned. What was one thing that you got out of it? So add that to your post directly. It's not enough just to say, it's okay to just say, yeah, I took the course, but give yourself that added value and that added visibility by talking about something you learned, one of your takeaways. If you're taking a course and you haven't finished it yet, you can't add that yet to LinkedIn, but you can add it to your resume. Currently enrolled in. Whether it's a refresher course, something new, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're currently enrolled in something, currently taking, again, demonstrates that idea of lifelong learning, learning new skills, and taking that proactive approach. You're seeing this asked for a lot in the jobs that you're looking for. You are being proactive to start taking those courses in order to get yourself up to speed to do that job. In fact, it's also a good way of answering the question, do you have this? Have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Right? Do you not have experience in this? Instead of saying, no, you're right, I don't. It's something I've always wanted to get into, and I know how important it is. So I am currently taking a course in this, and I'm excited to be able to put that information to use here. Turn it around on them. Most companies will welcome the idea that you've been that proactive individual who's taking that initial step. So that's another way to get around it.
Linda,
Yes.
may I share an example of
Sure.
something that we're talking about? So for the group, I've been in Linda's group a while back, and today I'm rejoining. But we talked about ageism in the past, and one of the things that I did was I went to the local community college, and I joined a class called the Makerspace, the Idea Shop, where you can go and invent products. And so between last time and now, I invented a board game. Oh, thank you. And I want to somehow put that on. I'm trying to look into graphic design or things like that. I'm thinking about adding that to my LinkedIn profile. So I'm thinking that perhaps one of the things I could do is add the computer programs or the skills that I used in order to design that game. The other thing is that in that course, so I've been doing this for a while now, it's a population of students who are well younger than I, mostly men. And I do learn a lot in working with them. So I think that in terms of addressing, how to work with people of all ages or backgrounds, that could be of benefit. And I share this with the group because this is something that I've done that I have found has opened my eyes and it's been very helpful. Whether or not it leads to something, I think that some of the tools and skills that you're talking about, when you put this into action, can be very productive.
Absolutely. So congratulations. I want to hear
Thank
more
you.
about the game. Okay. But the idea
Okay.
is you can learn a variety of different skills. You can demonstrate them in so many different ways. You can take a free class. You can learn something new. You can volunteer and get some of those skills that you can use, as well as some additional networking and mentoring. So lots of different ways that we can do it. And there are ways of building some of those new skills, new activities into either LinkedIn or your resume or your cover letter, and most importantly, into your interview stories. It helps to make who you are. In fact, your whole idea about that makerspace and the game, I'd add something like that into your LinkedIn About section. It makes you
Okay,
stand
that
out
makes
and be
sense.
different.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda, for that tip. Yes.
Absolutely. That's what we're all about, is helping each other out here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you all have more questions, please ask them. But otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the questions you may face that are kind of those questions we worry about in terms of ageism. Chad, go right ahead.
Yeah, not necessarily directly related to ageism, but something that came up in the session that I attended from another kind of job searching group. The woman who was leading that group said that when it comes to your LinkedIn profile, she recommended against using the open to work badge for a couple reasons. One is that she feels like it's primarily going to attract recruiters who are just going to sort of spam you with jobs that have nothing to do with what you're looking for, just because they're trying to fill a quota. And two, if employers see it, they're going to know you're out of work and probably a little bit desperate to accept whatever kind of lowball offer they throw your way when they make you an offer. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I'm going to respectfully disagree. I'm a believer in telling people that you're looking for a job. If you're not telling them, how do they know? Not only that, yes, it is true that there are a lot of spammers out there. I got one asking to, write his resume. You're going to have to turn those down. You're going to have to filter through some of those. That's absolutely true. But by the same token, the majority of recruiters are telling us in all of their research that if the internal recruiters, not external, internal recruiters, hiring managers, if they know that you are open to work, they know that you are more interested in receiving their call, that you're going to be serious about the job search. An external recruiter, a headhunter, and I hate that term, but I was one, they're not interested in contacting you necessarily if you have that green banner up. That's true, because they know that everybody else is contacting you too. However, even as a headhunter, and again, the majority of headhunters I've spoken with, external recruiters, if you've got that green banner up, they again know you're going to be interested in getting their call. Is it necessarily going to be the right opportunity? It may not. But just as I mentioned to Michelle earlier, if you get contacted by a recruiter, internal or external, and you can figure out that they're legitimate, and some of them aren't, but if they're a legitimate recruiter and they've got a legitimate opportunity, if it's not the right opportunity for you, see whether you can give them someone else. Always thank them, always respond. See if you can give them something else. You'll notice even on LinkedIn, when I share a job that somebody else has out there, I always say, if this isn't the right opportunity for you, who would you recommend? That idea of sharing it helps everybody, and people are more likely to reach back out to you if you are in that caring, that sharing, that networking mode, if it's not the right spot for you. So my feeling with that open to work, do it. In fact, actually, Chad, I've had 2 people that I've worked with who have gotten jobs that I know of specifically because they had that banner up. Okay. One for whom a company made a position for him, had worked with him in the past and didn't know that he was looking. And I've had a number of other people who have gotten contacted and have now led to jobs because of that open to work banner.
And to Frank's comment in the chat about how it speaks to your network, I actually was just contacted this morning by a former colleague who noticed my banner and wanted to know what was going on and offered to have me take a look at roles at his company.
And that's exactly right. One of the things that you keep hearing about is that networking counts in terms of job search. Okay. And it does, but not necessarily in the way that everybody thinks about it. It's not that somebody in your network is necessarily going to walk your resume down the hall and that person is going to get you a job just by talking about it. It doesn't necessarily work that way. In fact, it rarely works that way. But networking can open up opportunities. Networking can help you learn more about the company, about the manager, about the role, about the culture, can give you hints about what works and what doesn't. So there are lots of different ways to do that. Networking is truly important. And it's one of the things we talk about a lot. But I think that open to work banner helps demonstrate not just to outside recruiters, but to your network and everyone else on LinkedIn that you are a viable candidate and you're actually looking. One more stat and then Chad, I see that you're ready to say something again, but one of the things we found is that people are more likely to take a look at your profile if they know that you're open to work. Okay. It's the last statistic that I saw was 60%. I'm not sure what that really means. For those of us who still have free accounts, it's hard to tell who's really looking. But we are finding that people are more willing to look through what's going on, to see what's out there, and to connect and comment with you, engage with you if you are also open to work. Chad, did you have something else?
Yeah, one other thing I don't know if you or Sue or anybody else in the group is familiar with this. I had a book recommended to me. I was just wondering if you're familiar with it, if you would endorse it or not. It's called Never Search Alone, The Job Seeker's Playbook.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list. But the idea is that networking is really important, as well as sharing ideas and tips with other job seekers. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Sue, I'm Sherry.
Hi there. Okay, so I just was laid off on the first. But prior to landing that job, I had the green banner up and I was getting email left and right. Of course, I also have my profile very highly optimized, having SEO experience. That's search engine optimization for those who don't know. I had my profile optimized to the capacity, maximum capacity, and recruiters were emailing me a lot. Now I'm hardly getting anything, and I don't have the green banner up. So I think I'm going to change that pretty soon.
Yeah. So the green banner really does help. And I know that there's some people who say it doesn't help, but take a look at those people or who are advising you to take it down. Those of us who really know the job search from all sides of that desk are advising that you keep it up. Yes, you're going to have to sift through some spam, but I think that the benefits outweigh the negatives. If you're concerned about it, put it on for a couple of weeks, take it off for a couple of days, and then put it back up. Okay. It's another way of trying to optimize what's going on out there. Sherry mentioned she had just been laid off. Last statistics that I want to give you is, if I can find it over here. Okay. The Urban Institute and an organization called ProPublica just found that 56% of all workers 50 and older have had at least one layoff or been let go from at least one job since they turned 50. What that means is that you're not alone. What it also means is that companies are starting to acknowledge, not just behind the scenes, but also publicly, that those job gaps, those layoffs are not the negative that they used to be. People understand that these job gaps happen. Employers, hiring managers understand that job gaps happen. It's not it's not going to be an absolute turnoff. It is understandable in this economy as well as anything else. And my guess is that many of those people who are interviewing you have also had one of those gaps in their background. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily work against you. We only have a couple more minutes, and I do apologize not only for having to change the time today, but also for having to cut it off no later than about 10 after. Okay. So we just have another couple minutes left. But I wanted to mention a couple of the questions you may be asked that you can think about that people may say are ageist, but there are ways around them. You know that it is illegal for a company to ask you how old you are. In many states, it is also illegal to ask what year you graduated. They can ask on an application. Okay, should not ask in an interview. There is no reason for a company to ask that, so think about what's behind it. So when did you graduate? What they're asking really, or the way for you to get around it, is, I've done so much since graduation that I've been able to put all that together, and I love the fact that I can continue to learn. They're looking to see whether or not you're resting on your laurels in addition to that idea of being old. Don't tell them what year you graduated. Don't add graduation date on your resume. Okay. You may need to leave it in on LinkedIn, but I will tell you that very few people are going to be asking for or searching on the basis of whether or not you have a degree as part of their search for somebody on LinkedIn. There are too many other characteristics. Yes, Michelle. Unmute.
Sorry, I saw two things. I saw one comment in the chat, which I thought would be important to address. It was one from John Hurt. He had said that he was advised to add the hashtag open to work, but I thought the hashtags were going away. So is that advisable or not advisable? And then we may not have time for this next one today because I know you're time constrained, but I think it may be a good idea. I was on a session yesterday and it was frustrating me because you hear feedback from good sources that kind of contradict each other. And this source and the topic was resumes. And having summary at the top is old. And so, we're all trying to find a job and land it. And it's frustrating to, be in these sessions because you're trying to do the right thing, where you either not sure anymore what the right thing to do is. So.
Okay. And I understand because I was in that session too.
I know.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. Objective at the top, absolutely not. Your objective is what you want, and unless this is your first professional job, that goes away. I am still a believer in the summary. I don't think you have to label it, okay? But I do think that you need to include at the top 2 to 5 lines about who you are in relationship to the job. It's your opportunity in a very free-form way to tell us about you. I read those. But I will say be careful about some of them because in some of the resumes that I've read and that I've worked on, people have a tendency to screen themselves out by that summary rather than screen themselves in. Just like everything else on your resume, it should be targeted to the job. Your title for the resume for the job is whatever the job title is that you're applying for, not what you want to do. It's not generic. So that title, your heading on the resume changes every time. And your LinkedIn summary, I think somebody else on that call yesterday, Michelle, said, you write the resume first. You put in the skills that are important for the job. You figure out what those accomplishments are related to that job, and then you do the summary. Because you already have figured out what's important for the job. That summary statement may be harder to write because you're trying to figure out what's important for it, but you truly, from my perspective, add that in. It's your opportunity to introduce you and do it. You can do it in first person. It's the only spot on your resume that you can do in first person. It's the only spot in the resume where you can include a little bit of personality. It's that only spot in the resume where you can really bring in some of the things that are important for that job that you might not talk about elsewhere in the resume. Okay. I'm known for my leadership skills. Okay. You can say leadership, but you're not necessarily, you're going to demonstrate it. You're not necessarily going to say it elsewhere, but it's another way of doing it. And if we're talking about some sort of sorting mechanism, the terms that you put even up top in that summary will be useful, and my eye will catch them. I don't care about any bots. I don't care about any sorting mechanisms. My eye will see it. So yes, Michelle, contrary position, you're going to hear lots of them. My view is include that summary. You don't necessarily have to label it, but include it and make it relevant to the job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other comments or questions? Excuse me, I haven't had a chance to look at the chat. Sue's right. The summary is you taking control of your story and focuses the reader on what you want them to find. And that's absolutely true. You have very little control over the whole process, but there. So Elfreda asked, or Elfie asked, why can they ask the date that you graduated on an application, but not in an interview? They can ask it in an application because it's part of the legal process. Okay, an application is a legal document, but it's also their pre-information for doing a background check. So they can ask it there. I will tell you though, as a recruiter, if you've attached a resume, not just uploaded one, but if you've attached a resume, I look at very few things on that application, if anything at all. I'm going to read your resume. The only thing I may look at from the application, are you legal to work in the US? Have you been convicted of a felony? I'm done. Some applications will ask you what your current salary is. In the state of Illinois, they cannot do that. In many other states, that's true as well. But if you've included what your actual salary is, I may look at that as well. But those are the only things that I actually look at from the application. Everything else I look at from your resume. Did that help, Elfie and Sherry? So Sherry said she made her title Executive Assistant Enhancing Efficiency. On LinkedIn, that's fine. On your resume, it is whatever the title is for the position you're applying for. So they want to know that you are applying specifically to their job. That's one of the ways of doing it. In terms of the other reason for adding it up there, it's that visual to the person reading it. If they're getting a lot of resumes coming in at the same time, then it's also their way of helping to sort them. But your title for each resume is the title of that specific position to which you are applying, not a generic title. Frank, I love your sense of humor. Okay. Frank said his answer to, have you been convicted of a felony? Not yet, but I'm willing to if it's required for the job. Okay. John.
Hi, yeah, I'm John. I live in a world where certifications are sort of the, your badge of what you know and how much you know and so forth. And I find myself applying to roles that require those certifications, the CPA, the Certified Internal Auditor, and so forth, and then being interviewed by people that don't have them. And I really, in some cases, when I have been able to get through to the hiring manager, even sometimes they won't be certified. In the handful of cases where the hiring manager loves me and hands me off to their subordinates to interview, that's where I really stumble because none of them have them. And there's a couple of things with that. First of all, they clearly don't appreciate what that means. The level of expertise and work and so forth that's gone into acquiring those. But the questions they ask demonstrate that they don't know even the job that they're asking me to do. And of course, I would never say that to them. And you make the best out of it that you can. But when someone who is interviewing me for a role in their department and doesn't know what common terms are used and so forth, it just, I don't know if strictly speaking that's ageism, but it's hard to get around that without sounding condescending to them.
Yes, but so I'm going to tell you that if they're not using those terms, if they don't have those certifications, one of the things that tells me is that the certifications on the job posting are aspirational, not required. Something they would like to have, but not something that's necessary. If the people with whom you are interviewing, especially the boss, doesn't have them or doesn't understand them, doesn't value them, don't talk about them. Talk about not the certification itself, but talk about what you can do for that job. If they're not using that terminology, don't you use it either.
Right. When I say terminology, I'm thinking about things like, I'm involved a lot with internal audit and compliance for banks. And so one of the top things that we do, regardless of which of those roles you're in, is risk assessments. And when I'm talking to someone about risk assessments, which should be the number one thing they care about, they don't know what that is. And if you were to look, for example, today, if you were to look on LinkedIn and just do a search on all the internal auditors at Bank of America or Wells Fargo, you'll find that half of them are not certified. And that never would have been permissible 10 years ago. So I'm scratching my head thinking, well, what's changed?
So what's changed is that people have started recognizing that certifications, degrees, okay, are not necessary to do all jobs, that they are becoming less important, which is why I said that even though you've got a degree and it's okay to put the degree on LinkedIn, for example, without a date, even if LinkedIn doesn't pull you up for having the degree, I'm not necessarily going to be searching for the degree. I'm searching for what you can do. I'm searching for the skills. If they don't have the certifications, Frank, then I'm sorry, John, then the question is, are you willing to work with people that don't have it? Is that an issue for you? And if it's not, then focus in on the work, not the certifications. Put it in their language.
Certainly. I mean, if someone who's hiring me for a compliance role is not a certified regulatory compliance person, that's an opportunity for me. That's an opportunity for me to go in and perform, maybe outperform expectations. So I'm not concerned about the once you get in the door thing. I feel comfortable that I can do that. It's just, getting there, it's just, I don't know. It's just, but several people have said, well, you're overqualified. I say, okay, what does that mean? I don't understand that. So
So,
anyway,
okay, we can talk about that in
Yeah.
another session or
Sure.
offline.
Sure.
Because there are definitely ways of doing it, and that overqualified is another way of saying old. Okay, and the idea is to say, here's where you go. This is really what I want to do. I enjoy this work. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to do this work rather than going beyond. And sometimes those certifications, when you're emphasizing them or whatever it is, tells you that you are not interested in doing that particular job.
Right.
You want to do more than is there. So are you sometimes dumbing it down, to use their language? You may be. But the idea is, if you are willing to do the work, then focus in on the work.
Understood.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yep.
All right. Sherry had asked a question. She said she wanted to add some files. I don't have time to try and play with it today, unfortunately, because I have my hard stop. But you can always add files as a PDF, for example, in our private group. As a reminder, ask to join the private group. Okay. If you haven't already been part of it, you can ask to join it at any time. I will make sure that I know who you are. Here's the link again. Actually, I'm going to turn off the recording in just a second.